Hello guys, and welcome back to another beginner's perfect ratios guide to get you started in Satisfactory. Now this time we'll be looking at copper and limestone, so if you do find this video helpful, please do drop a thumbs up, and if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump in. Now, like the iron guide we did last week, we'll be covering impure, normal and pure notes, looking first at copper and then going on to talk about limestone. Now, we will be talking about copper sheets, but please note you won't need to unlock or use these early on. It's good to know though nonetheless. Do note you will need the same unlocks as we discussed for the iron guide. So that's going to be base building for the foundations of the factory, then logistics for splitters and mergers for optimizing your ratios, and then logistics Mark II in tier 2 for faster conveyors. Now do note I also recommend researching underclocking for this video as you will be using it. Now our first impure node will be used to create copper sheets. The issue here is that copper sheets only use 20 copper ingots, leaving us 10 as a remainder, which we will for the sake of the ratio store separately, although the other option would be to run another constructor with a 50% underclock, which would look something like this. Do note that the concept for both of these are the same. Immediately after the smelter, we have a splitter sending the left lane off to either the container or the underclocked constructor, and then we connect the other two lanes with a merger sending 20 copper ingots to the constructor running at 100% clock speed. We shall next create copper wire using an impure node by splitting the smelter between two constructors, then merging the two constructors and sending them off to the container. You will then be creating 60 wire per minute. Next, we have cable. Now this is exactly the same as the prior build for wire. However, we will add a third constructor after the merger. Doing this will allow you then to produce 30 cable per minute, which will then go on to a container. Now with that out the way, let's move swiftly on to the normal nodes. Now the first one we have are the copper sheets. Now we can create these by placing a splitter immediately after the two smelters. Like the first copper sheet production, two of each of the splitter lines will go on to a constructor to create copper sheets. We will then combine the two other output lines from each of the splitters with a merger in the middle. Now this will then go on to a third constructor, also creating copper sheets at 100% clock speed. This will allow us to create a total of 30 sheets per minute. Next we have copper wire. Now do note that after the constructor's output, you will need to use the Mark II conveyors. We will repeat the first copper wire facility, however this time just doubling up the structures and merging them all together to head towards a container which will be producing 120 copper wire per minute. We now have the cable. Now repeat the wire facility, but instead of sending the wire to a container, we will split the line between two more constructors, and you will then be producing a total of 60 cable per minute. Again, remember the Mark II conveyors need to be placed between the first line of constructors creating the wire and the second line creating the cable. At this point, we will be creating a facility which covers everything. You will need underclocking unlocked at this point. Each smelter will be split into two constructors, each receiving 15 input of copper ingots. The two middle constructors that you can see here will be producing copper wire, which will then merge and go on to create cable in a separate constructor at the side, and then be deposited in the first container. We will then have the first constructor placed to the left of the middle two constructors, underclocked to 75%, producing copper sheets, then depositing them in a second container, and the last constructor will create copper wire or heading to a container. This build will produce 30 cable, 30 wire, and 7.5 copper sheet per minute. Next, we move on to the pure nodes, providing us with enough copper for 4 smelters this time. The first facility will double up the copper sheet factory, using 6 constructors to produce 60 copper sheets per minute, merging all sheets to the middle and being deposited in the middle of the build. Next, we have wire. As with the prior build, we will split the belts across 4 constructors and mirror this a second time. We shall keep the 2 sets of constructors separate, merging the items in containers which are leaning against each other. This is because we will be constructing a total of 240 wires per minute, and currently we do not have the Mark III conveyors available. The cables are also in the same situation. After the 4 constructors produce the wire, they will go along and split into 2 more constructors to produce 60 cable and finishing off in a container. Note that we will mirror this also, although if you wish you can merge the cable constructor lines together, providing you use the Mark II conveyors. Finally, before moving on to limestone, we have the mixed facility. With a pure node feeding this facility, we will dedicate the first 2 smelters to copper sheets. We are using the same normal node copper sheet design, and the other 2 smelters will produce wire. However, the first 2 constructors' wire will go straight to a container traveling around the outside of the build. The second set of constructors will merge the wire and feed a constructor for cable before resting in a final container. Now this build will produce us a total of 30 sheets, 30 cable and 60 wire per minute. We can now run the most important factory in the game, the concrete factory. This is because your base will be based upon it. You can never get enough concrete, trust me. Words of wisdom there. But on an impure node, we cannot produce enough limestone to run a constructor at 100%. Therefore, we shall run a single constructor at 66% clock speed before going on to a container. Now at 66% clock speed, you will actually be creating 10 concrete per minute. On a normal node, we will have to split the limestone between 2 constructors, and once again, we will have to underclock both of them to 66%, allowing us to produce 20 concrete per minute. And then finally, we have the pure node. Unfortunately, as with all prior concrete layouts, we will not have enough limestone to run 3 constructors at 100%. Thus, we will repeat the normal node layout and double it up, running 4 constructors at 66% clock speed. This will produce you a total of 40 concrete. So there you are, guys. Alongside the iron beginner's guide to layout ratios and now the copper and limestone guide to ratios, you should be able to use the layouts that I've provided you with to really kickstart your production in Satisfactory and get you off to the best start possible. Now, if you did find this video helpful or you enjoyed the video, then please do drop a thumbs up. It really does help me out a lot. And if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe as we cover plenty of Satisfactory content and guides. Anyway, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, ciao for now.